Hello everyone, welcome on board today's flight. Today we're flying from Monrovia Roberts International in Algeria to the Ascension Wide Awake Field in Ascension Island. Plane of choice is the CRJ200. Okay, let's get the plane switched on and ready to go. Turn on the battery master and clear the warnings. Very first step, the warnings are going to have to be cleared a few times throughout the setup as things change in the cockpit. Okay, now that we've got power, you'll see only the two center screens are on. So we could either start the APU or we could get some ground power. To get ground power, on the FMC we can hit MCDU menu, plane menu, external AC power, turns green, is now on. We go back up to the overhead panel, AC is now available and we can click it, it becomes in use and all of our screens are now on. Now we have to align the IRS system. So both of those switches need to go into nav and then need some hydraulics. This hydraulic circuit is the only one which runs purely off electricity. The other three require engines, so that's the only one we need to put on. And if we turn on the hydraulics display, you'll see that switch is on and it's powering all of those systems, which is enough for us to move around. We now need to tell the FMC where we are. We do that by going to the index page and pause init. And over here we can enter in our departure airport, which is GLRB. And put it into the airport field. We can now pick up these coordinates by clicking the button to the right of them and popping them into there. So the plane now, well, in a few minutes when the IRS is aligned, it'll know exactly where it is and how to get where we're going. Our next step is to plan our flight. You could do all this beforehand, I just chose to do it at this point. The plane's running on ground power, so it's not running any batteries down and it's not using any fuel. So I'm using SimBrief because it's relatively straightforward. A couple of important things. We need to select pounds as the unit because this plane really wants to do everything in pounds. Select the plane we want, which is a CRJ2, and the number of passengers, which is 50. Now this is a long over water flight and the plane doesn't actually have enough fuel to make it back to the land safely. So I'm not even going to let SimBrief try and set the alternate as none. Airline flight plan doesn't really make any difference, as you can imagine. The important bits are departure airport, which is GLRB, and the arrival airport, which is FHAW. Okay, so I generated a flight plan, which we can see on the map over here, and we can tell it we're happy with that. And now we have all sorts of useful information. The block time is very important for our plan, and our cruise altitude also very important. We can now take the route, which we can see over here. Plop that onto a little nav map so that we can follow along as we fly. Okay, so the route says our first waypoint is ROB. So if we go into search, navigate ROB, you can see it's right next to the airport. So let's add that to the flight plan. From there it wants to use airway UT328 and it wants to go to Merco, which you can see is over the sea. We'll add that to the flight plan. And our last waypoint is APROM. And we'll add that to the plan. So that kind of resembles what we saw on Little Nav Map. I mean on SimBrief. The only thing SimBrief doesn't give you is your final approach. If there was a star, it would have suggested a star. But we want to get the whole flight plan going. So we're going to show arrival procedures, and we're going to use the RNAV, the transition at Oxide. So it's going to put us into a hold at Oxide and then fly straight into the runway after a single loop. So we'll add that approach onto our flight plan. So we now have a full flight plan we can follow along as we fly. Okay. Now we need to do the maths bit of the setup, which thankfully there's a spreadsheet that comes with the plane. I have modified it a bit because the figures were well out and there are a couple of extra useful bits of information you can use. Okay, on this spreadsheet you just need to fill in a few bits of information. Most of them are for reference only, like this doesn't need to know what airports we're going to or from. Okay, field elevation, obviously we can get that from Little Nav Map. This particular airport is 30 feet above ground level. Now, I am using Active Sky, so I can get this easily, but you can use any method you want, including Little Nav Map, to get the temperature, which in this case is 24 degrees, and the altimeter setting, which is 1012. Now I popped this on here because the spreadsheet wants the inches of mercury. So now we can see that the pressure altitude of the airport is 70 feet. Okay, our destination airport is FHAW. Field elevation there is 277 feet. The projected temperature there is 27 degrees. And the QNH there is 1015, which is 2997. Okay, we're not using an alternate today. Now the cruising altitude we can get from SimBrief. If we have a look over here, flight level 320. So that is 32,000 feet. And our speed, we have to dig a little more for the speed. If we go into the flight plan section, over here we've got ground speed, and it's saying peaking at about 408 knots. So we'll put that in there. Don't need any more information in that thing. This is probably the most important bit, the ETE. So from SimBrief, I'm going to take the total time as 2 hours 58 minutes. So 2 hours and 58 minutes. Then in SimBrief we selected 50 passengers. This plane has 16 seats in section A, 12 in B, 12 in C, 10 in D, giving us our 50 passengers, and we want bags for 50 passengers. This now gives us just about everything we need. 9,000 pounds of fuel, takeoff weight 49,455 pounds. Oddly, there's one section where you need kilograms, so I stuck a little conversion in there, and we're going to need that for X-plane, so I stuck that in there as well. And then this gives us our takeoff speeds and our landing speeds after the fuel is burnt out, and the landing distance as well, which is quite handy. Our next step is to work out what our takeoff trim is. For the trim, we need the weight in kilograms and the index figure. So the index is 23.4 and the kilograms is 22,400. In the pilot handbook on page 5, we have an index 23.4 and 22,500 kilograms, which is there, and we follow that up. It's about 12.5. So if we go here, 12.5 would be there-ish, so we can put 7.6 as our trim. In X-plane, I believe it is the stats page, which it is, and the trim is over there. So I can trim up to 7.6, and that's that done. We then need to put in the correct weight, and our passengers and cargo is 10,250 pounds. 10,457 is the lowest we can go. And we can then set our fuel. Now you could do that in X-plane, but this is just a little more accurate. Plane menu and up. Board fuel in pounds, we wanted 9,077 according to the spreadsheet. Okay, fuel is now set. Now we need to set our V speeds. If you have a look on the primary display, V speeds are all 90. Set the V speeds over here to the left of the yoke. We've got the target speed, which is VT, or we've got the various V speeds which we can scroll through, VR, V2, V1. Okay, V1 is 143. VR 145. V2 154. In case you don't know, V1 is your commit speed. On takeoff, once you reach V1, you're going to be doing a takeoff. VR is the rotate speed where you pull back the stick, and V2 is the speed you start flying. VT is your target flight speed. So after you've left the ground, that's the speed you want to hit to start your climb, or while you're doing your climb. Obviously in a powerful plane like this, you're quickly going to go past that. Okay, 182 is VT. So our V speeds are now set, and as we increase in speed, those will appear on the speed tape. So it's a handy reference. Right then, now that we have our flight planned, we need to program the FMC. Best thing to do is go straight to the flight plan page. You'll see it's already picked up the origin airport because we initialized the position using it. So first thing we need to do is put in destination airport, FHAW. SMH. Finally. Okay. Route is used to save and load flight plans if you want. We're not going to do that today. The origin runway, you know from our sim brief is 04, which we're going to stick on there. Don't have to do that either. Flight number, purely optional. But we've got to stick, well, we don't have to stick something in there, but it's just nice to do. Okay, now our route. You only have the next line of the route on this first page, but when we fill that in, that'll go from page 1 of 1 to page 1 of 2. And our first waypoint, according to SimBrief, is Rob. There's no airway to get there, so we'll just click in there. Now it's got to search for Rob. It's found 2 Robs. One is 0 nautical miles, one's 5,000. You have to assume the 0 is the correct one. This is now page 1 of 2. You can now go to the next page. And we've just got a list of vias and 2s. Our next waypoint is we get to by going on airway UT328, so that's our via. UT328 via. Again, it's just going to do a lookup in its database. Okay, it says discontinuity because it knows where UT328 is, it just doesn't know which way we want to go down that airway. So that's fine. We will just put in Mirko, which is our next waypoint. And discontinuity goes away. After Mirko, we're going to the waypoint Apron, but there's no airway, so we're going to do direct. And you can do your entire flight plan direct if you want. In fact, you don't even have to do the flight plan. All you need is the start and end airports. But for this flight, may as well do it. It's a relatively simple flight plan. Okay, that's basically our flight plan done. Now you'll see at the top left it says mod. Anytime it says mod, there are unsafe changes, which is fair enough. We haven't changed anything. At the bottom right it says exec. If we push exec, this now changes to actual, and we have a flight plan. So if I go to legs, you'll see everything that we've put in. GLRB, Rob, Mirko, APROM, FHAW, which is great. That doesn't have our arrival in yet. So if we go to departures and arrivals, if there was a SID, we could put it here. Under departure, there isn't one. There's no star. All there is an arrival. We chose the RNAV13 on little nav map, and the transition we chose was oxide. So they're now selected, and we can exec, and they'll change to actual. If we now go to legs, you'll see GLRB, Rob, Mirko, APROM, discontinuity, because it doesn't know how to get from the plan to the arrival. And next page, then carries on. This is now the arrival, where it gets to FHAW. Okay, in order to clear this discontinuity, it's very straightforward. Go back to the flight, go back to the legs page, And next page, we click next to oxide, which puts oxide over there, and the previous page, and plop it there. So you want to go from APROM to oxide, and from oxide we then follow the approach in to FHAW. Right, by this time the IRSs have aligned and our displays are now fully live. So first thing to do is we made a change to the flight plan by fixing that discontinuity. So we just need to save that by pushing the exec button. Go to the top of our flight plan, GLRB, and we can change the format of this page, which we can pop up. Let's pop this both up. If we now scroll the format to the right, we should be able to step through the flight plan. Which apparently we're not able to do. No, we've got to use the arrows. Okay, so you'll see we're there. That's the Rob. Then Mirko. And we go to oxide all the way through to the runway. And we should be able to change the zoom on that. And we can move backwards and forwards and just see the flight plan live on the screen, which is a handy way to check it. Okay, you want to put that format back to the standard looking forward view. Okay, next we have to set our nav source. At the moment it's on nav 1, so if we scroll that all the way to the right, so it's off, and then all the way to the left it's now FMS. So the autopilot will follow the flight plan we've just put in. Now we can set our cruising altitude. Easiest to do is to pop that out, and we can set the altitude here to 32,000 feet. Does take a little while. Okay, 32,000 feet. Right, we're going to initially climb using vertical speed mode. So we click vertical speed, and then we hopefully easier to click and drag. Set it to 1.5, 1,500 feet per minute. So we're going to be climbing in vertical speed mode. We're going to need to set our heading. And to set the heading, we need to get the exact runway heading, which for our flight is 38 degrees. So, let's see, the heading has just appeared below the attitude indicator. And it's set to 38 degrees. And once we're happy that everything there is good, got our heading mode. Let's turn on heading mode. So heading vertical speed, 32,000 feet. Turn on the flight director. That will just give us our bars to follow as we fly. Not that that's really that important in this flight. It's quite simple, and we don't have a SID to follow. So that's all pretty good. Right, let's put that away. Now we need to turn on our yaw dampers. They're lit when they're not on, which is a little counterintuitive, but what can you do? And we then need to turn on our passenger signs. Onto on, there's on, off, and auto, so that up is on for those. Right, now we need to set our destination altitude, which is, I think, on the ECS page. So let's click ECS. Okay, landing elevation. Now the landing airport is 277 feet. For some reason this display doesn't pop out. So I happen to know that when you turn the knob one click, it's 40 feet. So here's our landing elevation knob. It's 40, 80, 120, 160, 200, 240, 280. Go back to there. 340, did it too many times, so I need to come down. Interesting. Let's come back a click. 280. Okay, that's close enough to the 277, which is the actual landing field. And then we need to set our barometric pressure, which we can do. There's the pressure there, and our pressure is 1012. So let's switch that to QNH. We're now ready to start up the APU and start getting this plane ready to go. So close the door. And away we go. Right, in order to see what's going on during the APU restart, we need to switch to the status page. Don't have to do this, it's just handy to see. Okay, over there it says APU door closed. If we go to the APU panel, which is right in the middle, click power and fuel. If you have a look over there, in a moment the door will open. It does take a little while. Should open. Okay, there is the door, which is now open, and door open is over there. Okay, now that the door's open, we can hit start stop. Start button's on. And you'll see it's coming up to speed. Okay, APU is now available. And we can clear that warning, which is telling us about the APU being available. Okay, we can now turn on the APU generator and turn off the ground power. Ground power is still available. So we can go back to the MCDU menu, plain menu, and turn off external AC power. See that ground power unit is now gone. Right, before we start the engine, we need to turn our beacon light on to let everyone on the ground know we're starting up. At this point we would do a pushback if we needed to, but as you can see we're going straight out, so we don't need to do that. We need to check that the parking brake is on. Which, there is the message on the status page, parking brake on, and that our throttles are on 0. Now you're not going to be able to move the throttles because they're locked at the moment, but make sure your control is on 0. Now we need to turn on the fuel pumps and the gravity feed right at the top. Gravity crossflow just allows the fuel to move between tanks to even the tanks out. Okay, we now need the rest of our hydraulic pumps. Now that we have a motor running, everything can be powered. Our left and right air conditioner packs need to be off because there won't be enough power in the APU to run the aircon and the engine starters. Now, ignition A or B. Each engine has 2 igniters and we need to pick one. Generally speaking, you'll use A on odd days and B on even days. Today is the 6th, so I'm turning on ignition B. Now we need to turn on the bleed air for the APU. If you have a look at the environmental control page, you'll see the APU is providing pneumatic pressure, but it can't get anywhere. So we need to turn those 2 on. Those 2 are the LCV and the isolator. You'll see the pneumatic air is now reaching the engine, so we can start. Okay. Right engine first, click the start button. Now we have to wait for 15%. On N2 it's 15% and we can drag that up and to the right. And wait for the engine to settle. Okay, looks like it started quite nicely. And the same with the left engine. That gets to 15%. Okay, engines are now running nicely. Right. Now we can turn our engine generators on. Hopefully we can turn our engine generators on. Okay, engine generators are on, and our APU generator can come off. Now we can stop the APU and turn off the power and fuel to the APU. The APU door over here should close in a moment. And there it goes. You really don't have to wait for it. If they went to all the trouble to model it on the plane, it's actually quite nice to see. Okay, APU door is closed, and we can now turn off the APU bleeds. Okay, now we don't need the ignition to keep the engine running. If we're in bad conditions, we can click the continuous and it will keep the ignition on just in case there's a lot of water ingestion or something. Okay, we can now turn on the air conditioning packs, which can run off the main engine. And we can turn on the left and right probes, which I can't find at the moment. There we go. Left and right probes are on. Set our flaps for 8 degrees. There are V-speeds in the spreadsheet for 20-degree flaps if you're taking off for a short runway as well. Right, now we can set our performance profile. You don't necessarily want to use full thrust on this plane. It's a very powerful plane. And if I can remember how to do that, okay, performance, thrust limit, and we put in our outside air temperature. The outside air temperature is currently 24 degrees. And we can then click the takeoff, which will limit our thrust. If you have a look over here, there's a little line there which will limit it to 89.9%. The line isn't necessarily in the right place. But the throttles will never go over that, so we can just put our throttles on maximum and it will use 89.9%. Once we're out of the airport, we can switch that to climb 91.3 maximum, and if you really want to cruise, although in cruise you typically use very low throttle. Okay, taxi and nav lights must come on. Put the landing lights on as well, and nav on, and we don't need the logo or the wind inspection. And now we need to turn on our transponder. Over here, transponder is currently on standby. Not sure why it says R, but we're now ready to start taxiing. Okay, here we are at the end of the runway. I've popped open the primary flight display and the map multifunction display because there's a little small, so at least allows us to see things a little bit better. One interesting thing is we've taxied right next to the ROB VOR, so it's recognized that we've been there and is now directing us to Mirko, but that's fine. We're going to be taking off away from our flight plan anyway. I'm going to have to manually get back onto it. Okay, so we are lined up, put our strobe lights on. Now things here start happening really quickly in this plane. We've got our V-speeds set. As we start moving, this display will fall away and the V-speeds will appear on the tape. As we get to VR, we need to start pulling the nose back. V2, we should be off the ground. And we then need to wait until we're sure we've got a nice climb going and raise the gear, and then try and trim the plane so that we're not pulling back or pushing forward, and we've got a vertical speed of about 1,500 feet per minute. Once we're there, we can engage the autopilot, which is just over there, and we can then set our autopilot to climb based on speed. Which is a much safer way of doing it. The plane will then never fall below our set speed. Okay, we've got our altitude set, we're in heading mode, vertical speed mode, all of our V speeds are correct, everything looks good. Okay, push the throttles up to about half the throttle travel, let them settle there. Okay, and then slowly push them forward to full power. Okay, and away we go. Okay, here come our V1 and VR mocks. It's V1 and VR. And we're off the ground. Gear up. And autopilot engage. Okay, now let's put her into speed mode, which will hold the current speed, raise the flaps, and now we can set our speed, and what we want is about 220, let's say. It used to be below 250 because of the limitations in place. Okay, so now we're in climb mode, 232 knots, it's going to capture our altitude. We now need to get onto our course. So let's start turning. You can see we're already almost at 5,000 feet. This plane really climbs quickly. Climbing at 4,000 feet per minute at the moment. Okay, that should see us cross over our navigation points. Once we get to that pink line, we can turn on nav mode. I don't think we need those anymore. Okay, we're over 10,000 feet, so while we're waiting for the nav to come up, we can set our barometric pressure to standard, and we can turn off our landing lights and taxi lights. Okay, we're getting close to our navigation, so let's turn on nav mode. Sometimes this thing needs a little prompting. That looks like it's captured it quite nicely. If it hasn't, you can always on this go direct to and click on the waypoint you want to go to, which will normally fix most of the nav computer's problems. Okay, now that we're over 10,000 feet, we can do whatever speed we want. Now this plane wants to climb at about 250. Until we get high enough, and then Mach 0.7. You'll see the Mach number will slowly come up. When it gets to 0.7, the tape should change, and we can set it for Mach 0.7 for the climb and 0.74 for the cruise. It should be in the region of 440 knots true airspeed. You can see already at 17,000 feet our true airspeed is 327, ground speed 328. One thing you can do in the climb is change the thrust limit. It gives a little bit more climb power. If you just go back to the thrust limit page and choose climb, you just get a little bit more power. Of course, you don't have to use the thrust limit at all, you can just use full power, but you might blow an engine. Okay, we're approaching our cruise altitude, and we just need to back off the throttles because the 91.4% throttle we've got is going to be way too much. Okay, we've leveled off and the speed should start coming up. We want to be about Mach 0.74. You pull the throttles back, you'll see the little purple line over there is showing that we are decelerating now, so we can push it forward. Well, there's just a little line that's about stable. Just keep an eye on it and fiddle a little bit to get it right. There you go. Now we have a true airspeed of 430 knots, ground speed of 403 knots, which is pretty quick, has to be said. Now, the descent, this plane is really fast and we're really high. So if we go back to our legs page over here, you'll see that at Oxide, on the longer flight you'll have to use next page to see that. But Oxide we need to be at 3,000 feet. We're currently at 32,000 feet, so we've got to drop 29,000. So just for simplicity, let's say we're dropping 30,000 feet. If we set our vertical speed at minus 2,000, which is 2.0 on the scale, that's going to take us about 15 minutes to descend. So 15 minutes before you get to Oxide, you're going to need to set the altitude down to 3,000 click VS and then drag it until the vertical speed on the display reads -2.0, and then the plane will start descending. The problem you got now is descending at 2,000 feet per minute, the plane's going to accelerate and you're going to exceed its rated speed. So first thing you do is you put your throttles to 0, so they're idling, and then over here you've got speed brakes, and you pull the speed brakes out as much as you need to hold around about 270 knots. And that's really about it. Other than that, from oxide inwards, it's pretty much the same as just about anything else. When you at oxide, it's going to do a single loop and then come straight into the runway. As it's going into the runway, you click the approach button, which will then fly you down the glide slope. The one important thing to remember is on the spreadsheet we looked at earlier, which is here at the very bottom, your VREF, that's your speed you need to be touching down at, 133, and the approach speed is VREF plus 10, 143. You need to be approaching 143, and when you get to the 30 feet call out, you idle the throttles and gently flare. Speed should come down to 133 and you'll touch down without a problem. And that's really about it.